Hi, it's Diederik Gelderman here, speaker, trainer, author of 4 published books, and founder of Business Productivity and Turbocharge Your Practice. Welcome, it's great to see you. Before I go on, I've got 4 of my 10 dogs running around here, so if you hear some snuffling or whatever, it's not Michelle who's videoing this, and it's certainly not me, it's the dogs, all right? What I'd like to talk about today is good medicine. One of my coaches way back in the dark ages said to me, Diederik, good medicine is profitable medicine. So to have a profitable practice, you just need to practice good medicine. And one of the areas that I think we let our clients down in that regard to a great degree, the good medicine I mean, is in our chronic medication monitoring program. And why do we let our clients down, or what do I mean by that? I mean that not many practices have a formal chronic medication monitoring program. Now, in human healthcare, these things exist. If you're on a chronic medication, whether it's something for blood pressure or whatever it happens to be that you're on, warfarin for people that have had heart valve surgeries, heart valve replacements, whatever it is that you're on, you've got to go and see the doctor twice a year typically in order to get a repeat script, and also they're going to ask you to have blood test run to make sure that everything's hunky-dory. Now, some practices that I know have sort of a default, type sort of a program, but it's not formalised, it's not documented, all the team hasn't been trained in it. And so I really think that we're letting our clients down in that regard because we don't do that formally. We don't have a definite system in place. Now, having a definite system in place is certainly something that I work on or with my one-on-one clients and the guys that come to my workshops. And we have a formal chronic medication monitoring program that formally gets people to come back once a year or twice a year or 3 times a year or 4 times a year, whatever you decide for the medications, the chronic meds that you're using, and it's documented. And the thing is, the clients love this. They're expecting it because it occurs in human healthcare. To some degree, they can't understand why vets typically don't do that. And when I do client surveys with my one-on-one clients, typically we hear that all the time, that, how come I can get a script for 2 years for something like Rimadyl when there are all these horror stories on the net about it? Shouldn't you be monitoring my pet more closely for, liver disease, etc., etc.? So the clients are aware of side effects more so now than ever before, and they're also aware of what happens in human healthcare, and they're aware of the fact that a lot of the vets don't do it, and they're really up for it. They want to have it done. So this goes back to good medicine. This is good medicine, monitoring regularly, and it's also profitable. Now, still more stuff about this. Most veterinary surgeons boards or whatever they're called in your state, your country or whatever, they also predicate that you've got to have a relationship with that pet or with that client in order to redispense medications. Now, in some countries it'll actually state, 6 months or 12 months or whatever. In other countries it'll just be a loose, you need a relationship, and that is up to you, I guess. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to go through my 11-step chronic medication monitoring program blueprint. And I've got it down here, and I'm going to go through this, and also it'll be available as a download. So, click on the link and there'll be a copy that Michelle will put online. So the first thing you need to look at is, what medications are you going to monitor? So, what medications? So it's up to you. I'm not going to go any more into that. The second point is, how often are you going to monitor these medications? Is it going to be annually? Is it going to be biannually? Is it going to be triannually? So, for example, in my practice, we monitored dogs that were on Lysergine, OP, DDD, whatever you want to call it, for Cushing's disease. We monitored them 4 times a year. So they had an ACT stim 4 times a year, and they were quite happy with that. Now, I'm not saying that's right, I'm not saying that's wrong, I'm saying that's what we did. So you may have some medications that are monitored once a year, some that are twice, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. It's up to you to decide. The simpler you keep it, the better. So if you have, if you can organise it so that all your medications are monitored, say, twice a year, then that's going to be a really simple process to monitor, a simple process to deliver, a really simple staff training exercise. Okay, so up to you the medications and up to you how often. Now, what about the test? So the next thing is you've got to decide on what test or tests you're going to run. So for, phenobarb, are you going to run a phenobarb level twice a year or once a year? You're going to run your liver function test once a year or twice a year. So what tests are you going to run? Typically in most practices they'll run one of the IDEXX pre-anaesthetic screens or senior screens, whatever you want to call it, the small mini profile, plus the QBC or the laser sight or whatever, and that gives them enough for liver and kidneys, etc. else, and they'll send the phenobarb or the bromide levels or whatever it happens to be off, or if they're measuring digoxin for, say, an AF case, that'll go off. So what tests are you going to monitor, and then what charging, what's the charge that you're going to put on this? So again, it's up to you. There's no right, there's no wrong. Decide on a charge. Now, back to these tests, the simpler you can keep it, just as with the how often, the simpler you can keep it and the less variety in the tests, the easier this program is going to be for you. So the fifth thing then is the monitoring process, and I mean this from the practice's perspective. Now, what I mean by that is at each of these revisits for the blood test, and let's assume it's twice a year, is that a vet role? Does the vet examine that animal twice a year, do the blood draw and everything else? Or is it maybe once per year is the doctor visit, and the other time is the nurse or the tech visit? And at that doctor visit, there is the comprehensive annual examination, and that's obviously charged for as a consultation or an office exam or whatever you want to call it. And then at the other test, at the 6 month or 3 monthly, whatever it happens to be, are they nurse tests? So, for example, in that case, it'd simply be a nurse doing a blood draw. There would be no physical exam, or it might be very cursory, listen to the heart and the lungs and take the temperature and look at the colour and refill and weigh the dog or cat, that sort of thing. So in human healthcare, when you're having monthly tests, for say warfarin, clotting levels or whatever, or whether you're having blood pressure checks or whatever, in a lot of cases they're nurse consults. And so that would be a reduced fee. In some cases, obviously, where you just go and get the blood draw at, the local lab, there's no fee at all except for the blood testing fee. So one of the things I'm going to say to you is the more you can analogize your chronic medication program to what happens in human healthcare, the greater the compliance is going to be, because the client's going to say, yes, I know, this is how my doctor does it, or this is how my doctor does it for my mother. So the more you can, mimic or copy or analogize human healthcare, the better. Most of my coaching practices that get this to run super well is they would have a 1 a year doctor exam, a 1 a year doctor visit, and there's blood taken, etc., etc. And at the 6 monthly visit, it's a nurse, and the nurse takes the blood. There is no charge for the nurse's time. You just charge for the blood test. And again, decide on your charging for this. I'm just making sure I cover all the points because I want to go through them carefully. So the simpler this process is, the better, okay? Don't make it too complicated because you'll have lower patient or client compliance. The sixth thing is documentation. So you need to develop a system for the way we do it here for your practice, and that needs to be documented. So all that is documented, and that's locked in, and then your team is trained in that system. And then any new person that comes on board is they can be given that document and say, hey, this is our chronic medication monitoring program. This is the way we do it here. Okay? Now, the other thing about the documentation is to look at the sticking points, the objection points that the clients may come up with. So, for example, how do we handle it if a client says, so the client comes in at say 5.5 months or 6 months, they need another bottle of Phenibut, for example, just to pick something, or digoxin for AF, or Forticor for heart disease, benazepril for heart disease, or more Lasix, frusemide, whatever you want to call it. And the nurse says, hey, you really need another blood test, and I really can't dispense this without another blood test. What do you do in that situation? And I'll tell you what my practice coaching guys do, and this comes from directly what we did in our practice. So at the visit before, let's start right up front. When the clients first put on the medication, they're educated as to the 6 monthly blood tests, for example, okay, whatever they happen to be. And they're told that we can't give out, or we're not going to give out medication if we can't, it's risky to give medication without checking liver and kidneys, urinalysis, etc., and therefore we need to have a regular review process to make sure that the medication levels aren't too low, they're not too high, and there's no liver damage or kidney damage. So the client needs to be educated, they'd be given a handout on the side effects of common medications, etc., etc. So we're going to assume they're really well trained, because that's part of this whole system, is educating and training the client. So they come in at 6 months, they want a review, they want a new medication, they say to the nurse, hey, Kathy, look, I'm not having that blood test, I just can't see the value in it, or I can't afford it, or whatever. So what is the system? Now, with my one-on-one clients, what we do is we have a safety netting procedure. So this is number 7 is the safety net, and that ties in with the documentation. So I'd be saying, or the nurse would be saying, Kathy, Mrs. Klein, Mrs. Kathy, look, this medication can cause side effects, just like all medication does. I know that you want to be sure that, there's nothing untoward happening in your pet, the levels are right, etc., etc. So, the way it works here is that we will give you a safety net of medication. So there's another 2 weeks worth of medication. Rimetal, Forticor, benazepril, digoxin, whatever it is. There's another 2 weeks. That'll allow you to get organised and make an appointment to bring Fluffy in for those blood tests. So that is the safety net system. Now, you could be really harsh and say, no, cut-off date is today, it was 6 months to the day, you're not getting any more, whatever. I think it's a bit harsh, and you could lose clients out of that. Whereas if you have this safety net system in place, plenty of time to educate them, then most clients will comply really easily or really well. Now, if you've got a safety net in place and it's documented and everyone's trained in it, then your nurse that's having the conversation with your client doesn't have to go racing around the building finding a vet to approve an extra 2 weeks, etc., etc., etc. That's just a total waste of time, effort, and your money, having staff running around trying to check all this sort of stuff in and check it all out. Whereas if you've got, this is the way we do it here and it's all documented, then she knows that she can give another 2 weeks of medication, and she knows what to say to that client because she's been trained in it. So now we get to step 8, which is a reminder system. So this is a reminder system so that the client knows ahead of time that their blood test is due, on the 14th of August or the 14th of January or whatever. So they're going to get a letter a month out, or a phone call, or and I don't like SMSs. There's not enough characters. You can't put enough characters in. And you'd like this system to be automated through your computer. So again, the way that I have it running is that you can set the reminder up to be generated from a previous product sale. So when they buy a box or a bottle of Phenobarb, you know, it knows that at 5.5 months it's going to generate a reminder, or the reminder can be triggered by the previous blood test. So it could be that when they have a chronic medication monitoring program blood test, that automatically triggers the reminder at 5.5 months. But whatever way you get it to work in your practice is fine, as long as you have a reminder system in place so the client gets the heads up saying medication monitoring blood test is due soon. And by the way, if you want some of the templates for this reminder system, I've got some awesome, fantastic templates in the UVP program, and they are just stunning. We're getting huge client uptake on the back of those specific letters. They've been designed by Chris just brilliantly, and the results are better than any other medication reminder I've ever seen, and we get massive positive client feedback from those reminders. Number 9 is handouts. So as part of this whole system, it's worth developing some handouts about, you know, the dangers of chronic medication. And those handouts can be given to the client when the pet first goes onto the medication. They can be available as a download from your website. You can even do them as a YouTube video and just talk the client through it. They work really, really, really well because it's a me on you conversation, and it's coming directly from, you know, the practice personnel, and the clients just love that. Now, don't go reinventing the wheel. Don't spend hours generating these client-centric handouts. There are plenty available on the web that you can ethically copy. IDEXX, and please, I know I've mentioned IDEXX 2 or 3 times. I'm not promoting IDEXX or its equipment or anything else. It just happens to be that I know what they have. I'm sure there's other pathology companies that have handouts as well, and if you use them, then by all means grab their handouts. The next point is who rings the client. So when these blood tests are done up here in step 5, who rings the client after those blood tests are done? Does the doctor ring the client after every blood test? Is the nurse or the receptionist the one that rings the client after every blood test? Or is it the nurse rings unless there's something wrong and then the doctor rings? Or is it the nurse rings every time, and if there's something wrong, the client's booked to bring the patient back in to be reviewed by the doctor? Now, whatever way it is, it makes no difference. There's no right, there's no wrong. There is just your system. So who rings the client? Determine it, make it simple, and make it a system. And then the last step, step 11, I hope the camera is going down this low, is send a copy of the results in the mail. Yeah, I know. Yes, you've already rung them. Yes, I know that. And I'm saying you need, and I'm very dogmatic about this, you need to send a copy in the mail. A whole heap of reasons, but I'll lump them all under perception of value. If you want to look at the studies on this, then grab Robert Cialdini, Dr. Robert Cialdini's most recent book, and it's the one called Yes. If you remember, Bob Cialdini wrote the book Influence, The 7 Laws of Influence. So his newest book, is a book called Yes. And in that, there are some studies, he cites studies on perception of value with respect to a client, whether it's a vet client, a doctor client, a psychology, psychiatrist, dental client, whatever, receiving just a phone call versus a hard copy of the results in the mail, especially when that hard copy has been amended. So typically these would be black on white, you know, because they're going to be emailed to you or faxed to you by the lab, or they're going to be done in-house. They're going to be printed out in-house on your in-house lab. So they'll be black on white. So if you get, it's all right, we're just recording. So if you get a green pen, a purple pen, a blue pen, a red pen, or whatever, and annotate on that record, and let's assume the hemoglobin levels are a little bit high, so where it says HB and there's the little star on your results, you'd circle that, put a little arrow and say, hey, hemoglobin is part of our red cell component, and it's a little bit elevated because Fluffy was excited when she came in. Or for example, you may have a phenobarb test that came through, and there might be some mild elevation of ALP or ALT or something like that. You'd make an annotation about why that's up, or maybe copy in the last results and just say, hey, last time was actually higher than this, now it's better. That's really good news. So personalise and annotate those results, send them in the mail, and also do a little, congratulations. So just like, congratulations, you're engaged or you're married or you've got a birthday or whatever, you can do a little balloon card with, congratulations, you're a fantastic pet owner, Fluffy's going really well, results are excellent, etc., etc. The client's going to get a real buzz out of that. And the other thing is, that is concrete. So that serves to validate the charge. And then if they have that lying on their coffee table, or they have it on their fridge with a magnet or whatever, and a lot of clients will have, and friends of theirs come around and they see this, those clients are going to say, those friends of your client are going to say, but my vet doesn't send me my blood tests in the mail, or my dog's blood tests in the mail. And that's right. So this is a really good marketing exercise. So, as I said, 10 and 11 may seem like nuisance value and may seem like overkill. However, they are critical in giving a perception of value to your client. So, that's it. Time frame, I'm going to say that the time frame to get this up and running in your practice is 3 months. You'll be able to lock it in 3 months very, very, very easily. Now, there's one other thing that I didn't cover right up front, and I've deliberately left it to the last here now, is we talked about this being good medicine. We talked about good medicine being profitable. We talked about the importance of this in the health of your pet. If you've got elevated LFTs and the pet's on phenobarb, or if your DIG levels are really high and the pet's on AF, got AF, and that's really dangerous. All that sort of stuff. If you're doing an ACT stim and the Cushing's disease is out of whack and that shows it up, that's all really good medicine and is going to help that pet live longer. In the long term, it's going to save the client money, etc., etc. The one thing I didn't mention right up front, and I will mention it now, is the legal stuff. Okay, the legal stuff. Yes, there's laws in all the countries with respect to how often you give medication out and everything else like that. This covers your butt, and this covers your butt big time. Now that's the least important reason. The most important reason is the good medicine and the profitability. So that's it. This is your chronic medication monitoring program that you can implement in 3 months. And we're going into winter in Australia, and it's really it'll be quiet for the next 4 or 5 months in most practices. So this is the ideal time to implement that program. In the Northern Hemisphere, I know your busy months are coming up in June, July, August. I'm recording this in the middle end of March, so you've got another 2 to 3 months before you really get super busy, frantic in your practice. So you've got an opportunity to put this in place and have this running before the busy time comes, and get some extra profitability in your practice. So that's it for me. See you on the next video. Bye.